Now the latest from ITV News Meridian in the southeast with Stacey Poole and Matt Teal.
Hello and welcome to Friday's ITV News Meridian.
Your headlines in the southeast. The spirit of Ukraine. The southeast comes together a year on from the start of the invasion to show support. We're at a vigil in Hastings and we hear from the Canterbury Ukrainian Choir.
A 16-year-old with a brain tumour from Eastbourne tells us why he's hoping for treatment in Paris. His family is told it'll cost £2,000 a month.
Also tonight, good news for heartbroken couples hoping to tie the knot at Lymm Castle as it's snapped up by a former reality star.
And from couch to multiple marathons, a 72-year-old from Sussex who's not letting retirement slow him down. Good evening. The one-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine has been marked with a series of events across the southeast, demonstrating support for the Ukrainian people and their armed forces.
After a minute's silence at 11 a.m, a Canterbury choir sang the Ukrainian national anthem at Cannon Street Station, where Southeastern unveiled the Spirit of Ukraine, a train named in honour of the Ukrainian railways that helped to get so many civilians to safety.
Well, one of the biggest events is being held in Hastings, where people are gathering this evening for a procession and vigil. James Dunham has spent the afternoon there.
This is a sombre and reflective event here in Hastings. Dozens of people holding a giant 20-metre Ukrainian flag. Of course, the war in Ukraine is thousands and thousands of miles away here from the southeast, and while the southeast does provide some sanctuary, it does little to shelter the pain of seeing buildings destroyed and hearing of lives lost. Let's talk now to Natalia, who is one of the people who's moved over here after being resettled. Natalia, thank you for talking to us. What's the last year been like for you?
It was very loneliness, without our family. Like son was without father, and we are somewhere else but home.
And what does today mean for you?
Well, it's a big reminding for that we have to keep fighting, that we find another families here who replace our families who we lost, and replace our home that we lost. And it's like a year of sorrow, but as well as year of hope.
Thank you very much, Natalia. If you follow me down here, we'll be joined by the event's organiser, Krista. What does this show, do you think, in terms of solidarity to Ukraine?
This is a very, very important day for Ukrainians all over the world, and we need to come together to mark a year of the war that was started against Ukraine and show that we're united and we will fight on.
And what does this sense of community do to spur you on in supporting people back home?
It's hugely important. It's hugely important. I think it's very important to nurture every single individual, Ukrainian individual, so they can do their absolute utmost in terms of development skills and learning English, so they can be strong and earn the wages that they deserve here and when they go back to Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Krista. Well, 6,000 people have been rehomed here in the southeast from Ukraine over the last year, and while the war continues, the show of support does too.
James Dunham reporting there. In other news tonight, Medway Council has lost its bid to be exempt from taking in unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. The council brought a legal bid against the Home Office over a scheme where local authorities share the responsibility. It argued it had issues with capacity and the policy ignored important factors in deciding whether the scheme would prejudice other work. But the High Court has today dismissed the council's claim.
A staff member at the University of Brighton has pleaded guilty to stealing more than £2 million from his employer over a 30-year period. 64-year-old David Hall was head of income and payments. An investigation found he covered up the theft by creating false entries in the university's accounts. Hall will be sentenced next month.
Council tax is going up for people living in Brighton and Hove. The council agreed to raise tax by 4.99%. Councillors say it will help to prioritise children and youth services and support vulnerable people. But there are calls for the government to address local authority funding. Medway Council has also agreed the same increase.
A man who seriously injured two shoppers at a Brighton supermarket has been jailed. Levant Hassan attacked the customers on separate occasions at the Asda in Brighton Marina in 2020. He rammed a trolley into one man's leg after being challenged for not wearing a face mask during the pandemic. He then punched another man unconscious a few months later.
Kent Wildlife Trust has registered to oppose the Lower Thames crossing, claiming it's harmful to wildlife and their habitats. It says proposals threaten part of the Shorn and Ashenbank ancient woodland, home to rare wildlife, including woodpeckers and dormice. But National Highways say it's refining the route to reduce the overall impact on ancient woodland by around 70%.
A jury has heard conflicting accounts of a teenager's state of mind when he stabbed his grandmother to death at her home in Brighton.
Pietro Addis, who's 19, denies a charge of murder but admits manslaughter. He stabbed 69-year-old Sue Addis 17 times. The defence and prosecution disagree over whether the defendant was suffering from psychosis, as Malcolm Shaw reports.
Pietro Addis admits killing his grandmother, but the central issue at his trial is what drove him to do it. The defendant, then 17, had moved in with Sue Addis after falling out with his father and stepmother. But 1 week later, he stabbed the restaurant owner 17 times as she lay in the bath. Giving evidence for the defence, Dr. Peter Misch told the jury that he believed the defendant was driven by a temporary transient paranoid delusion, a brief psychotic breakdown based on the delusional belief that his grandmother meant him some harm. After the incident at Sue Addis's home in Brighton, Pietro Addis dialed 999 to turn himself in. The moment of his arrest was captured on an officer's body-worn camera and shown to the jury. For the prosecution, Dr. Duncan Harding said that the body-worn camera footage suggested that Pietro Addis was in shock, but otherwise acting normally and rationally. He later interviewed the defendant at length face-to-face, and he told the court that he could find no evidence the teenager was suffering from psychosis. Sue Addis was well known in Brighton, running the popular Donatello's restaurant in the Lanes. Her grandson, who's now 19, denies her murder but admits manslaughter by reason of diminished responsibility. His trial continues next week. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Lewis.
Next tonight, a 16-year-old boy from Sussex thought he had a stomach bug when he started having random bouts of sickness and headaches last summer.
Jake Willock got progressively worse and doctors diagnosed him with a rare brain tumour. He needed life-saving treatment, but a drug trial in France could be the answer. As Joe Caution reports.
Daily Bugle was donated to me.
When Jake's not creating giant Lego buildings and cars, he says he loves gaming and hanging out with his friends at school. But of late, he's not had the energy to do much of that. A gruelling side effect, he says, of intense radiotherapy and chemotherapy treatment for a rare brain tumour.
I am someone who has been pretty smart my entire life, and I've lost a lot of school time and lost the ability to do a lot of things.
For a little while he lost the right side of his body, couldn't see, so he stopped socialising altogether, and then he was too nervous to go outside.
And what's that like as a mum to watch?
It was horrible, it was awful because he's always been a social boy.
Jake's teenage life was put on pause when he was diagnosed with a diffuse midline glioma, a fast-spreading brain tumour that impacts around 175 children a year. Due to the position of it, they can't be removed with surgery, and targeted treatment isn't available in the UK. At a cost of £20,000 though, the family want to take Jake for life-saving treatment in Paris, using an experimental drug that's been successful in trials. Stumped at how to fundraise, they turned to Tunbridge Wells-based children's charity Tree of Hope to help, and in less than a fortnight, they've managed to raise over half of what they need.
We're really, really happy that we've been able to provide them with the hope that they need to get the support and the treatment that Jake needs to thrive.
I was amazed that there was something out there for him. It's directed at his type of tumour. So grateful that so many strangers have come forward. Friends and family, staff at school, they've been amazing. They've shown so much support.
Yeah, I kind of hope it can cure me and I can live my life.
Jake hopes he can start treatment next month, meaning he can plan for the future by applying for a construction course at college. Judging by his impressive Lego builds, I think he'll manage. Joe Caution, ITV News, Eastbourne.
More than £17 million is being invested in bus services in West Sussex. The government money will go towards boosting passenger numbers, supporting the local economy and reducing traffic congestion. A range of schemes will now be developed, including cheaper tickets for young people.
A star of the TV show Real Housewives has bought historic Lymm Castle in Kent and says weddings there are back on. Last week we reported how dozens of couples were shocked to receive letters saying that their big day at the 700-year-old castle had been cancelled. But the new owner, Anne Kaplan-Mulholland, who was on the Real Housewives of Toronto, and her husband Dr. Stephen Mulholland say each and every wedding contract will definitely be honoured.
When we found out, we had to move fast because we hadn't even set up our emails or phone systems yet. We hadn't taken over the castle. So we did take control of that. And I was upset. I'm married. I was upset that I saw that people were, I mean, you wouldn't want to be a bride and then you get this message that your wedding is canceled. So we put into fast movement to be able to respond to whoever we could. And we also gave them a 20% discount, the existing brides, not discounting anything from what they were getting, but just discount off the price that they had before. And we're going to give them all a big gift basket. So it can try to move it from that, oh my gosh, what happened in my wedding, to a feel-good thing for them. And then they can enjoy being a princess and a prince for the day.
Now you're watching ITV News Meridian. Still to come on the programme. A year after the war in Ukraine began, quadruple amputee Alex Lewis joins us in the studio to talk about his work supporting people who've lost limbs in the war.
And as we go towards the weekend, high pressure is the name of the game. Yes, we continue to feed in that northerly flow. It's going to feel chilly in the wind, and there's little change to the forecast the next few days. Full details in 15 minutes.
And you can find more on today's stories on our website. Just head to itv.com/Meridian. You can call us, the number 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter and on Instagram.
Next tonight, a new study has found that many businesses are underprepared to evacuate all employees safely in an emergency. It reveals a lack of awareness and duty of care for people with a disability.
They make up 1 in 5 of the working age population, and new laws are being introduced to protect them because their lives are being put at risk if they have to escape in an emergency, as Chloe Oliver explains.
Every week in the UK, there are more than 400 workplace fires. It's why fire and rescue services carry out exercises like this one to make sure everyone inside, when the worst happens, has the best chance of getting out alive. But if you live with a disability like Richard, who has muscular dystrophy, new research suggests the plans aren't always in place to keep you safe. He says he has to make a calculated decision every time he enters a building, because he's not always confident he'll be able to get out in an emergency.
There need to be stricter protections and considerations for disabled people. A few times I've had to evacuate to a safe area in a stairwell, for example, and either the call button wouldn't work, or I'll press the call button and then no one would come. Still, I was forgotten about, and had it been a bigger fire, I could have died.
A new report by EvacChair International, who make evacuation chairs for those with a disability, has found that a quarter of businesses in the UK don't know how many people with mobility issues they employ. And almost a third admits they're not properly prepared to help evacuate employees that need help. Accessibility consultants can help businesses put a proper plan in place. Peter Connell does just that in Tunbridge Wells and says problems can be easily avoided.
The old fire regulations, they still exist, and saying the same thing, you need a refuge for a disabled person that has a two-way communication system. In a public building, what happens if you've got 20 disabled people? Where do you put them? In one refuge? They're going to block up the stairway, in which case nobody escapes. So things like that have not been thought through. And then that's where, again, with a inclusive design consultant, can talk with fire engineers about using a different way to get people out of the building.
At this solicitors, some members of staff have undergone special training to make sure everyone stays safe.
We have a regular number of training sessions for people to be trained on that, as well as regularly have fire drills across the office. The clearer the obligations are on employers, then the better it is for all of us to understand what we need to do and look after our workforce.
Currently, there is no law in place about evacuation equipment, so some of the most vulnerable in our society are relying on goodwill when an emergency happens. Chloe Oliver, ITV News.
Now, the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international stories at 6:30 with the details this evening. Here's Charlene White.
Coming up, Ukraine 1 year on. Tonight, we've the latest from Kyiv as the first anniversary of the Russian invasion is marked there and around the world. Also ahead, a 3-day strike by junior doctors in England. We'll have the dates and the details, plus...
My word, does victory taste good.
Could Newcastle taste domestic glory for the first time since 1955? We'll have the build-up to Sunday's Carabao Cup clash against Manchester United. So join us for those stories and more from 6:30.
But first, over the past 9 years, we have been following the incredible journey of Alex Lewis, who contracted strep A, which led to sepsis and organ failure.
Well, he was given a less than 1% chance of survival and had to have both legs and arms amputated. But despite all the odds, Alex did survive and has gone on to achieve the most incredible things. He set up a wheelchair factory in Ethiopia, provided prosthetic arms to every child in the UK who needs one, and raised hundreds of thousands of pounds through his foundation to help others.
Well, Alex's latest project is to help those injured in Ukraine. He is just back from a 6-day tour of the area, trying to establish exactly how he can help those who are struggling and that there is always hope. And I'm delighted to say that Alex joins us now. Alex, you're just back in the last few days. Tell us what you discovered there.
So I took a team of people from the UK with me that have been centric to my healthcare, and we went there to listen and learn. And we met many injured servicemen. One example was a chap who'd lost both of his arms in a bomb blast, and he'd spent the first 8 weeks in hospital unable to use prosthesis. And we took out a post-op and soft sleeve prosthetic and fitted him with those when we were there via video link to London. And yeah, just trying to understand the patient pathway really, and how we get these guys back into as near normal life as possible.
It's made such a difference seeing that happen there.
It was very emotionally bruising, I think is probably the best way to describe it. These guys are so resilient and they're just intent on going back to fight on the front line, but they are missing, they've had severe amputations, and there is equipment available to them, but it's a long way down the line. And they can't see beyond the war at the moment in terms of what life is going to look like post-war. And for us, it's trying to understand how we can help build a pathway so they can go back to whether they're farmers or engineers or designers or whatever they want to do.
I Well, we've seen some pretty powerful images of your trip out there, images of burnt out tanks and the devastation. What was it like for you being out there and seeing that firsthand?
You can't prepare yourself really. You hear the stories and you obviously seen the press. But when you're actually there and you can see the sniper bullet holes and you can see some of the bomb blasts and the missile strikes, and to think that people were fleeing, but they have all moved back. There is reconstruction and they are trying to rebuild their city. It's just utterly inspiring, really. But also there's a huge amount to do for the injured and disabled community, not just the military, but also civilians.
So this isn't a one-off trip, you're going to have to keep going back?
Yeah, so we've come back to the UK now and we'll start to build a programme with our partners in the Ukraine. So that's Ukraine on Palms and the Ukrainian Medical Mission. And with the help of the Transglobe Trust and the We Help Ukraine charities here in the UK, we will develop what we hope is a patient pathway from life after surgery all the way back into moving home.
No, you're a man who never stops, basically. Just give us an idea of what else you're working on at the moment in terms of fundraising.
So fundraising, next thing for me is a 300-kilometre cycle ride around Salisbury Plain.
So a mere jaunt, basically.
It was a little jaunt. It should have been around the Namibian desert last year, but our bike never turned up to Namibia. So we brought it back to the UK and we're going to unveil it on Salisbury Plain and do a 24-hour 300k cycle ride for the Murray Parish Trust.
That sounds tricky. Also, you're going to take to the water as well, I think.
There will be an event in June, yeah. I'm adapting a Flying 15 at the moment, and I intend to row from Falmouth to Dover, and then I will cycle all the way back from Dover, all the way back down to Falmouth, and that's called the Pig to Pig event.
So there's plenty more to talk to you about the next time we get you in, which we will.
Thank you.
Yes, but we are out of time for now. Alex, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now the sport with Andrew Payton. Andrew, you've also got news of somebody fundraising for the Ukraine.
Absolutely. Though this does have a bit of a twist. It involves a young goalkeeper at Brighton Hove Albion's academy. Jerome Ingerson raised money at school so a Ukrainian child could afford football boots. To recognise his good deed, Brighton's first team goalkeepers organised something rather special.
You Jerome, yeah? Great to meet you. I'm Jack Stern, one of the first team goalkeeper coaches here. So you were told that you're coming in to do some litter picking today, which I think is really great and really helpful. But actually, what you're going to do today is train with the first team goalkeepers and come and help us training with Rob Sanchez, Jason Steele and Tom McGill. And that's because we heard about the fantastic gesture that you did and the kindness that you showed to someone else. And we really think that embodies what we are as a club and the culture that we have about treating people well. So we just wanted to reward you for that today and invite you out.
Well, Brighton Hove Albion don't have a match this weekend, but in League Two, Gillingham and Crawley are in action. The Gills looking to build on 3 consecutive home wins when they host Wimbledon, while Crawley are desperate to move out of the relegation zone, but have a tough task against third place Carlisle. Now, if you've recently retired and are looking for a hobby, how about marathon running? Well, that's what John Miles from Sussex decided. He's now 72 and is on track to complete the World Marathon Majors, as I found out.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
It's been quite some journey for John. From couch to 26.2 miles to be precise. But he never set out to go this way. It's just he felt unfit when he retired and thought competing in the Brighton Marathon would be something to tick off the bucket list. But then he decided he wanted another go.
I like to think, how could I have done that better? How could I have improved it given my age and limitations, and I realised that there were several things that I did that were not optimal at all. So I ran it again and I knocked 18 minutes off my time, and I was overjoyed with that.
So here he is at 72, having run 4 of the 6 World Marathon Majors. London following last year's runs in New York, Boston and Chicago. Next month it's Tokyo, with Berlin in September. How do you find running now you're in your 70s?
Every time I run these days, it tells me, oh, these are the runs, these are the times you've done this run before, and by the way, you're slower this time. So it's a little bit demoralising. So at the start of my running of marathons, I got rapidly better, and now I'm declining rapidly. But never mind, I'm still in there, and I feel extraordinarily fortunate to do it.
John's running on behalf of local charity Dementia Support. Based in Sussex, it's a unique service, and they call their experts wayfinders.
They wrap themselves around the whole of the family. If you speak to anybody that's unfortunately had a diagnosis with dementia, they will know that it's a really disjointed system. Unfortunately, you know, there's pockets of really good services, but they're not together, they don't link up. So we're there to pull it all together.
John says knowing he's helping others spurs him on during the tougher miles of a marathon, and told me, whatever your age, if you're looking for a hobby, it's a lot of fun. John there, a fantastic example to all of us.
He really is an inspiration. Was he always sporty?
No, he said at school he hardly did any sport, but when he retired he just felt unfit, and he said, well, running, you don't need much equipment, it's quite cheap, you can just go out, and just loved it. Because he was a sort of scientist and an engineer during his career, he then really used that part of his brain to go, right, I can work on this, I can work on that, and he sort of got better and better and was there.
Respectfully, it's nothing to do with any of that. It's because his surname's Miles. It's like John Miles and Miles and Miles.
It was always
going to happen. He's certainly going a lot of miles.
Really good. Anyway, Andrew, thank you.
Thanks very much. Well, here's another man with boundless energy. Chris Page with your weekend weather.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello there. Very good evening to you. Today there's been some patchy amounts of cloud across the region. A lovely start first thing this morning, as you can see here, but as we look towards the weekend we're going to start to see more cloud pushing its way in. In fact, it stays largely dry, but where we do have the breeze, that northerly breeze, it will feel rather chilly, and that's because we've got this area of high pressure located towards our north. The winds circulate around the high in a clockwise fashion, and as the isobars get closer together we get more of a strong northerly breeze as we go through the weekend. That will just take the edge off the temperatures for all of us. Out there at the moment we've got some clear skies around, just some patchy amounts of clouds, some isolated showers as well, but for most of us staying dry overnight tonight, and with the clear skies by dawn temperatures could be dipping close to, if not below freezing, particularly in the countryside. So a chilly but fine start to Saturday, more sunshine to kick off Saturday morning too. We'll begin to introduce just a little more cloud as we go through the afternoon, so some sunny spells developing, isolated showers here and there, and top temperatures of 7 to 8 degrees Celsius. But when I said about the breeze, it's going to feel more like 1 to 3 degrees Celsius, so make sure you do wrap up warm through the weekend. Here times of high water through the weekend, looking at Dover there at 11 minutes past 2 tomorrow morning, and again about 2:30 tomorrow afternoon. As we leave Saturday, going to Sunday, we still have that area of high pressure, and this is going to be the name of the game as we go through the next week as well. Still feeding in that northeasterly breeze, 1 or 2 isolated showers, and because the air is cold, there could even be a little bit of soft hail in there too on Sunday. A touch more cloud through Sunday, but still a chilly feeling day in the wind, but staying dry, and that story continues into next week. Bye-bye.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
And that is it from us for this evening. The ITV Evening News with Charlene White is coming up next.
But from all of us here at Meridian, thanks so much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend from us. Take care. Good night.
Bye-bye.